First thing I want to share with you, and I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Evan Horton, and I was named Superintendent of the Coweta County School System on March the 3rd of 2020. Yeah, you got it. Good. I figured you might get that. If you don't learn anything else from this presentation, you can take away that my sense of timing is awful. It's awful. But in all seriousness, named on March the 3rd of 2020, official start date was June 1st of 2020. And just like each and every one of you, 2020 and 2021 was the hardest year that I've ever experienced. It was the most difficult professional experience of my entire life. I was just like you, had no idea how to navigate a pandemic. You're walking into unknown each and every day, and it's all that you can do to just get through that day. And the frustration for me was I didn't get an opportunity or didn't feel like I got an opportunity to do anything strategic. So we rock and roll through all the unknown through the pandemic, and I joke all the time that I've gotten one good week of sleep during my time as superintendent. And it came after we finished up vaccine clinics for our staff. We did those on March the 12th and March the 19th of 2021. And I finally rested comfortably because I felt to a degree like a burden had been lifted. We finally had a tool where people had a choice if they wanted to use that tool to protect them against COVID. And up until that time, we didn't have that tool, and I, like every one of you, I carried that burden with me every day. The burden of what if? What if? So March 19th comes and goes, and I'm feeling pretty good. And then March the 26th of 2021 occurs.
We could see some wind damage as a result of straight line winds. Although we didn't see the very heavy rainfall in northern, we saw the heaviest rainfall in northern Georgia, not so much down here. So we have some good news here as far as the ground not being saturated like it is.
Hey, Glenn, have you noticed this? Yeah. You see this little kind of hole there? That's an indication in this reflectivity of a powerful tornado. This is kind of, in a sense, like a tiny eye of a hurricane. That's the center of the circulation of the tornado showing up there. And so that's an indication, in addition to the velocity that we saw and the lofted debris signature, that this is a powerful tornado on the ground there in Randolph County. One thing that's important, though, that we point out is that this is passing now east of Highway 431 there. The real population in this area, the bulk of it is down towards Roanoke. So the center of this tornado is passing just north of that population center, Roanoke, at the bottom of the screen.
I was one that went to bed because, like many of you, I get the weather reports. And we were told that if we got to dark, we would be okay. So I went home that night. I'm a creature of habit. By 10:30 at night, I'm in the bed. About 11 o'clock, my wife comes in and says, "Hey, you might want to get up." And in typical Evan fashion, I say, "Nah, we're good. I'm going back to sleep." 12:09 a.m., transportation director calls me from the basement of a church. And you could hear chaos in the background. Nothing in my life that I had ever experienced prepared me for what I would see the next morning. This is downtown Newnan, approximately a block from the school. EF4 tornado with 170 mile an hour winds at its widest point, approximately 1.5 miles wide, came right over the top of Newnan High School, downtown Newnan, and Atkinson Elementary School. Luckily, it missed our transportation facility by about 100 yards. Middle school that sits next to the transportation facility was also spared, so it could have been worse. This is approaching Newnan High School from the southwest. As luck would have it, the building that got hit hardest has 13 buildings. You can see total devastation, significant damage to each building on campus. It's also one of our oldest buildings, built in the early 50s. But you can see that Mother Nature did not spare us. So this day was the beginning of a long-term recovery. Just to look at the damage, again, I mentioned Newnan High School. It gets most of the attention, of course, because it's the high school was the most damaged. Atkinson Elementary School also had the roof sheared off of it. You can see roof damage on every building at the high school, debris scattered everywhere, windows busted out, structural integrity of 7 out of the 13 buildings, I believe, totally compromised. So we had our hands full. And I don't mind sharing with you, in a moment of total transparency here, I had no clue what to do. First year superintendent, just having the job, learning the job, there's what I like to call a crisis of confidence that goes with that. You don't know what you don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. Not a ton of confidence, especially after dealing with COVID. Just so much unknown. And here we are, just after daybreak, standing on that campus, and I had no clue what to do. So what have we learned? The first thing I'll share with you is, and I said it earlier, nothing that I had ever experienced prepared me for what I would see that day, and certainly nothing prepared me for what I would feel. Seeing people that you care about, their lives destroyed, their homes destroyed, not knowing if they're okay, seeing the impact of it on my kids who saw it, nothing prepared me for what I would see and feel. Our first priority, and I put it here because I don't want to take it for granted ever. First priority is just to make sure everybody's okay. Nothing else mattered in that moment. And Dr. Puckett, I don't know if you want to speak real quick about how you guys went about making sure everybody was okay.
You know, they always train us in principal school, you have that safety notebook. And whatever happens, you turn to that tab and you follow that tab. They never really told us what to do when you don't have that notebook or the building. And the first thing Dr. Horton told me, he says, take care of your folks, make sure they're okay. And we came up with a phrase, Dr. Barker coined it, that we started developing some muscle memory with dealing with COVID. We had no muscle memory. And so all I knew to do was, you know, look around and go, I can't use my computer. Internet's down. We have cell phones. And so the first thing we were tasking my leadership team is we've got to account for every single staff member. And so I texted my department chairs and my admins and said, use your good old-fashioned phone tree. But instead of letting them know school's canceled, I need you to reach out and have two-way communication with all 220 staff members. And our goal was by 4 o'clock that afternoon. The next step was, how do you account for 2,300 students? Because the neighborhoods that were most directly impacted were all around Newnan High School, and we had went home Thursday night with a normal routine, and kids were expecting to wake up for school, and their phones were all down. So our counselors and admins, their goal was, over the next 48 hours, have two-way contact with every single family. And by Sunday evening, we're able to account for everyone, but it took reaching out to everyone with social media, with a Google Sheet that we shared out, with text messaging, using methods of communication we'd never used to try to make sure people were okay. But the first priority, Dr. Horton said, was take care of your folks and make sure they're okay, because the rest of the stuff we would figure out later.
And you know, I never realized, and I was over safety before I became superintendent, I never even thought about when a storm hit after school hours, needing to make sure that everybody was accounted for. We talked a lot about that when it might hit during school hours. Never ever thought about having to secure the facility either. When you have 2 schools destroyed that are in the middle of town, you got to get them secured because members of the community could get hurt. Your own staff could get hurt. So within 48 hours, we were able to work with our insurance company to be able to have both facilities secured, fenced off so that no one could get in and out. Next bullet there that I have is the intentionality of communicating. And I know, Mr. Whitlock, you want to touch on that, but we learned really quick that we had to be intentional and that people wanted to hear from us. Mark?
Dr. Horton, it was 2:27 a.m. when we got the first email from you. It was very brief, it was very much to the point, and it was about in the morning. What are we going to do in the morning? It was intentional, easy to use, easy to share, easy to communicate with others. The next email we got from you a little bit later was, we're going to all get together on Saturday. Here are the things that we're going to talk about on Saturday. So the intentionality of your communication had us ready for Friday and ready for Saturday. And we knew after Saturday we'd know where to go from there.
I'm glad I had them ready for Friday and Saturday because I wasn't ready for the next minute. I can promise you. But we were figuring it out as we went. We were literally moment to moment, dealing with moment to moment information in the moment, working through. Those scenarios, and I can come up with some, they really paid off for us, but we didn't think of everything. So I encourage you, when you're doing your emergency planning, think over the horizon, think off the wall, think crazy stuff. We took for granted that we were just going to be able to pay our employees. Tornado went right through downtown. It cut our county in half. We had no ability to communicate. We had no internet. And on Sunday morning, I am toying with the decision of flying my comptroller to another state to be able to pay the payroll. Never in a million years would I have thought that processing payroll would have been an issue. And then those purchasing policies and procedures, I encourage you to take a look at them. Good emergency purchasing policies were huge for us. We were able to go to that policy. We knew what to do. The board knew what to expect so that we could do the things we need to do in real time to be able to get our facilities back online. Just a few more. Teachers' personal items, have a plan for them. Never in a million years did I think about teachers' personal items. But you better believe they will let you know that they're important to them the minute they can't get in the building. And I pray that nobody in here ever goes through this, and I certainly pray I never do again. But you better believe if there is a next time, we'll have a plan for those personal items because they are vitally important. And Dr. Barker, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the offers of help that come from many directions, and there were tons of them.
Sure, I'll be glad to. So as Dr. Horton said, the tornado went right through the middle of our community. And so our entire community was affected, but it was such a strange situation because some people, their homes were completely destroyed. But you just go a few miles down the road and it's sunny and there are not leaves on the ground. They're all fine. So trying to make sure everyone understood where what we were facing and the challenges that we were facing was quite a challenge for us. And so many people with such great big hearts, and we appreciated every offer. But we had so many offers, people showing up. I'll never forget, we had a gentleman who showed up with a truck bed full of hot dogs that he had cooked, ready to just hand them out to us. And we didn't really have a place to hand them. And he was just so ready to offer help. We had offers from across the states, so many people. So we really had to quickly organize that, not only just for our school system, but for our whole community. We learned a lot of lessons, and in hindsight, we could have organized even a little bit better, I would say. But certainly, again, we pray this doesn't happen to you, but you need to be thinking about that because we had so many offers, it was just staggering to us.
And that was one person only has so much bandwidth. Karen took that piece with the curriculum team, and they drove the volunteer, the request for help. They handled that to the point of we're having to call employees together and kind of slow them down so that we could get our hands around that. But they were so important in taking care of that. Next point I'll make is partnerships. Partnerships sustained us through this. And the partnerships I'm talking about are the ones that have been created and nurtured across our school district for the better part of the last, I've been in the district 22 years now, for the better part of the last 22 years. Our former superintendent, Dr. Steve Barker, did a ton of work with the chamber, with local community groups. West Georgia Technical College is one you're going to hear about in just a minute. But those partnerships were able to really sustain us and help us to move through this. And Mark, you want to mention about some of that? You were vital to some of that work.
Dr. Horton, a lot of what helped sustain us was that culture in our community of the school system, communicating and collaborating with business. That's been built over decades. What most recently occurred, I think, was our use of flexibility. The use of flexibility that allowed us to build partnerships even more deeply. West Georgia Tech, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but they actually reached out to us 12 hours after the tornado.
One of the things that really I struggled with for the better part of the first couple of days, you know, we were still in the middle of COVID. We weren't coming out of it at that point. But you know, those youngsters, those elementary students, virtual is just not it. They really struggled with that. I know my own daughter, she's hearing impaired. She really struggled with virtual learning. So I knew that it was urgent. We had to find a way to get those elementary kids back in school, and it was not going to happen at Atkinson Elementary. Within 12 hours, West Georgia Technical College had reached out to us, said, hey, we think we have something for you. Within 5 days, we had a signed agreement with the Technical College System of Georgia. Done. They gave us a building for Atkinson Elementary School to use for the rest of the year. So within 5 days, we had what I consider to be one of the most urgent problems taken care of, not because we figured it out, because they figured it out for us. We were able to relocate, and Atkinson Elementary was able to finish school in person for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. And that was probably the first night that I slept well after the tornado, was when I knew that those little ones were going to be taken care of. It's on there again. You can tell that it's important to me. If you ever go through something like this, you got to be mindful of the emotional impact of it, not only on yourself, but on your team and on all of your employees. And everyone was affected by this in a different way, including me. Everyone, and we all process that in our own unique way. And then it's a marathon. I learned really quick that this thing, we weren't going to solve it all in one day. We were going to solve it day by day. Truth of the matter is, we are 18 months out now, 19 months. We're right in the middle of it, and we're still figuring it out day by day. Financial planning, it matters big time. Our board over the years has been very fiscally responsible. They have been excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars over the years. They have put money away for something like this, hoping that it would never happen, and it has paid off for us, especially now that we're having to tear down a large portion of Newnan High School and rebuild it. We're financially positioned to do that because of great work that went on in our system many, many years ago, long before I became superintendent. And then a long-term relationship with our insurance company. We are intertwined with insurance. Anytime you have devastation on the scale of large industrial buildings like schools, you're going to be working with your insurance company for a very, very, very long time. It's not a deal where they just write the check and say everything's good. We have a weekly meeting with them still to this day to be able to try to reconcile all of the insurance matters and the property matters that we're dealing with. And then I'll let probably Mark and Chase speak to this a little bit. Priorities. One of the things that became very clear to me was that we had to establish our priorities as soon as we could get our head cleared. And to do that, I had to get my head cleared. I had to get out of the moment and do my best to take a step back so that I could determine what our priorities were going to be in the medium term and in the longer term. And here's what they were. They became clear almost immediately. Making sure everybody was safe and accounted for. Done. Next thing was Atkinson Elementary School. How do we get those little ones into school? That was 2. Third one was, what do we do for Newnan High School for the rest of the year? There is no good place in our county to put 2,400 of your closest friends on short notice. But we had to figure it out. COVID perfectly prepared us to be able to do that. Think about it. If we didn't have to go virtual at the end of the 2020 school year, we would have been right back in March 2020 as a result of the tornado. But we had been perfectly prepared for that. So after we got Newnan squared away, the next priority was, we're graduating in that stadium. Community was going to demand it. Were they not, Dr. Puckett? You want to talk a little bit about that?
When we figured out everyone was safe, I'll tell you, after my audience, if you ever want to know how to help your principal in a time of crisis, it's walk the campus with them. That next morning, we were shell-shocked. We had about 20 minutes of being shell-shocked before state, local, and national media started showing up. And they're putting cameras in our faces. And at one point, I heard Dr. Horton say, and we're going to graduate the seniors in that stadium. And I remember thinking, okay, we're graduating those seniors in the stadium. But he recalled the previous year where we all were having to have those conversations where graduation wasn't something we could do. It was important for my superintendent to remind me not to forget my students. Because I get in crisis mode, I'm dealing with a task. And so one of the biggest challenges was figuring out where do we start. He started by walking the campus with me and having those tough conversations. And it was the emotional toil on our staff. We had just announced the previous week that we were excited that we were back to normal, face to face. And a little odd fact, we'd actually had a tornado hit the school a year before. Yep. And it ripped off part of a building. Took 6 months to get it fixed, and we had just gotten back to using that building. So we're excited about, we get to get back together. And so when we talk about priorities, one of the things Dr. Horton challenged me was take care of your folks. I'm a task person. I'm over a big high school, Title I, budgets and numbers and schedules and bells and graduation rate. And he reminded me, take care of your folks. And so one of the first priorities was to bring our staff together. And I remember he had to prod me because I was so busy trying to figure out how do we teach? How do we do virtual learning, again, with no computers, no labs, no space, nowhere for teachers with no internet. He said, you got to bring your faculty together. And I had kind of been putting it off because I was still reeling from it. And he got the space set up for me. And what he did is he spoke to the principals first. And he shared with them what we were going through. And he allowed the principals to see the toil the leadership team in his office was facing. And prepared me for talking to my staff. Talking to your staff and letting them know it's bad. And we may never go back into that building again. But we are going to be okay. The first priority was to communicate to our graduating seniors that year, we're not going to forget about you. To our parents, to our kids, and our staff and community, we got this. There's no script. We don't know what we're going to do, but we've got it. We're working as hard as we can, and we're going to take care of you. And that emotional component became more important because it got our kids across the line. And it also got our staff ready to come back for the challenges that come with rebuilding a school that's been there for, this year we'll graduate our 135th graduating class without 7 of our buildings. But it was Dr. Horton prioritizing take care of the people first.
And I will tell you, our buildings performed exceptionally well. Tornado hit at 12:09 a.m. It's worst case scenario for a community. We had plenty of warning. By the grace of the good Lord, one person in our community passed away from the tornado as a direct result of the tornado. That's of course one too many, but one in a middle of the night scenario, we were extremely blessed. Our buildings did exactly what we would have expected them to do. Kids would have been wet, kids and adults would have been scared, but the buildings performed exactly the way we would have anticipated. The places we put kids, the buildings, as old as they were, did their job. That was one of the first things that the engineers told me. Along with that, though, this has caused me to think differently about daytime scenarios. I won't be the Lone Ranger if we have a bad weather forecast that's saying, oh no, we're going no matter what. This changes you. It has changed me. And I think for me, part of being the leader is sometimes allowing my mind to go places that I don't want it to go. Somebody has to be thinking about, what if that thing hit 9 hours earlier? What if those 600 vehicles that were on that campus each day were there when it hit? Because the ones that were there were picked up and thrown over top of buildings. So it's changed me. I will promise you. It has changed me in the way that I think about daytime scenarios. So I challenge you, think about, and we can't run scared. You got to lead. Think about it. Think about it. Because it will certainly change you. And then I got it there again. Somebody's got to begin thinking about possible solutions to long-term problems quickly. You got to distance yourself from the immediate issues, or somebody needs to be distanced so we can start thinking long-term. That is a place where Dr. Karen Barker, Mark Whitlock, and our district-level leadership team, they got to work. They got to work, and they started thinking about what the long-term problems were and how we would be able to solve them. And they refused to take no for an answer. And Chase, while we're here, I don't know if you want to share, since we're talking to a group of superintendents, what did you need from me and from the district leadership team as we went through this as a principal?
I can tell you the first weekend, I mentioned walking the campus with me. It was preparing me for the onslaught of everyone in the world knows how to reach the principal. I didn't anticipate, I thought phones would be down, no internet. Every school social media account, every single person in the community wanted an answer about what do you need. And every good friend of mine with a four-wheeler showed up on campus with chainsaws ready to take down trees. And Dr. Horton said, we got to secure the campus. And I called my lead SRO. He said, well, what do you need? I said, I need some officers to secure the campus. He's like, you've got 13 buildings and no fences. How are you going to pay us? I went, I don't even know where the checkbook is. But our priorities from a superintendent, what I needed was, okay, I need you to call somebody to make sure, can we hire these officers to do this job and to secure the campus till the fence goes up? The other thing I needed from my superintendent and district staff is I needed the ability for me to deal with a timeline. And because I'm one of those, I could get lost in the immediacy of right now. And he set a timeline and said, okay, your priority right now, make sure your folks are safe today. By the end of the weekend, make sure your students are accounted for. Then we'll figure out how do we finish out the school year. And then we will finish out how do we start school next year. So what I needed from my superintendent, he would give me just enough a piece of the puzzle coming down the road so those wheels were turning, but then he put his team on the tasks. The other thing I needed was I needed a crash course, and I'm good with budgets. I'm good with spreadsheets. I'm that type A personality that knows where every dollar is spent. But I got a spreadsheet with 80,000 items on it and a letter from the comptroller saying, hey, don't forget, make sure every check you sign, everything you sign for is on this spreadsheet and it's accounted for. And I had to call him and say, I need a little bit of help with this because this is a lot. He provided me with the ability to have some folks to teach me how the insurance process worked, because it's very dangerous for someone to get up and say, yeah, insurance will cover that. That sounds great the day of a tornado. But when it's a month before football starts up and everyone's looking at you, we're figuring out where the lights are coming from, I needed a crash course on how does insurance really work. The other thing I needed was extra resources. We had to figure out, I had about 30 staff members who had nowhere to teach. We did get the ability, and he called me and said, right now, I think we're not going back to school for at least a week in the county. Keep in mind, some of our schools had no damage. Parts of our system didn't even notice the impact except for downtown Newnan in that area. So we had about a week to figure out how to do school. And one of the things he did is he laid the foundation, and Dr. Barker laid the foundation for other principals. He's probably going to call you. because I had to find out where am I going to put my bookkeeper to sign those checks for those SROs? Where am I going to print stuff that they need printed? Where are my teachers going to teach when they don't have their desktops? And what are they going to do when they show up at our rival school and they give them a classroom and we have no textbooks or teachers' editions? And so the things I needed were, okay, that's good. I know we're going to figure out how to build a new school, but in a week I got to find some resources for these kids. And then I said, and I got about 100 kids with no internet. We knew they didn't have internet because during COVID, I was providing them with hotspots because the Grantville neighborhood didn't have high-speed internet. That meant they weren't going to get school for the last month of school, and I said, I need help, and he tagged with Dr. Karen Barker, and she'll be able to tell you a little bit about what we did, but we found a place for about 80 kids to do school without buildings.
Dr. Barker?
All right, so you've heard really a lot about what I'm about to say, because you've heard about West Georgia Technical College with Atkinson. But for Newnan, we did have several students who, first of all, several seniors who needed credits to graduate, and we needed them face-to-face. So we had about 100 students, and when you're a district and you've been strategic at maximizing your locations, and we have about 31 campuses in our district, and we had really excelled, I would say, at maximizing our facilities, and that's great day in, day out, but when you need room and space, it creates quite a challenge, and so we really didn't have any space. So for the Newnan High School folks, we ended up converting our central office into classrooms, and so we bumped some folks out of offices. We didn't have any professional learning areas for the rest of school, and we did bus duty and a little bit of lunch duty and whatever it took at central office to get those students to finish the year. We also, one of our high needs areas that we identified, we had several classes of students with special needs. And we knew that we had to find a place for them. They needed face-to-face instruction, and they needed their services met. And it would not have been we wouldn't have been able to do that virtually the way we wanted to. And so we ended up finding a place for them, and thank goodness for Central Educational Center and Mr. Whitlock. He opened his arms and his doors, and those special needs classes went there, and I think they're still there today, aren't they? Yeah. They've made themselves a new home. And so we found space for them. For our Atkinson elementary students, as that we shared, West Georgia Technical College reached out, and what Mark didn't share with you is they said, we have space available. Our students are finishing the semester, and so we have some classrooms available and maybe some office spaces that might be available. I don't think in their wildest dreams they were thinking of 5-year-olds. I think they were thinking of high school kids or, some of the central office folks that might be rerouted over there. But instead, we talked with them, and we ended up sending all of Atkinson Elementary, and that's over 400 students, to West Georgia Technical College. In the end, they were so gracious, so welcoming. Their staff was incredible. We had an open house, and at our open house, we allowed the families to tour West Georgia Technical College, and during that time, it was almost like a recruitment fair. Parents signed up to take some college courses. We even had some parents sign up to get their GED. So we turned certainly a lemon into some sweet lemonade for those families. West Georgia Tech did just a tremendous job welcoming us. They helped us with Field Day, and then they created something that we call Field Day Fridays. And so the students and Atkinson would tour different programs at the college level and just get a taste of what it was like to be at a college campus. So we have a short video.
Even when my light burns low.
I was kind of sad that the school was there because it was like one of the oldest schools in the county. But when I figured out it was here, I was like, oh, yes, we don't have to go virtual. That's really great here.
But I'll be living in the clouds. Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now.
When I first found out I had to go to college, I felt scared, excited, and felt like it was going to be fun. I was a little sad that we had to move, But now that I'm here, it's kind of funny that it's a 7-year-old in college.
When Atkinson closed, I was heartbroken because it's not going to be usual. And I like West Georgia because we get to see all our friends who are in different classes when we go to recess and specials.
Now about the school being damaged and having to come here. At first I was a little nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen when we go back next year. But now I kind of like it here.
When my light burns low, I could never lose my hope. I've been down this road before. Now I know which way to go.
I like how that it's all different from Atkinson, and it's really nice here. I mean, we do the same thing, it's just a little different order. Field trip Fridays were really fun. My favorite one was when we went and looked at the cooking stuff with all the fruit and things, because we got to make our own little Bootstrap.
I could never lose my hope. Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now. You just gotta.
They were awesome, and I got to learn new things about like the dentist, the electricity, how machines get work.
And as quickly as they had come, they were gone, taking with them the walnuts.
I work with young children of over 30 years. What did you do with all those children? Those eggs? There were some birds. Some
What I liked was my favorite part about coming to West Georgia was Field Trip Friday. We went in the mechanic center and they showed us how they make mechanic stuff.
And one thing I liked about the Field Trip Friday is we did the dentist and we got to brush teeth and see teeth that were from different animals.
Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now. You just gotta live. Yeah. I just wanna live.
This was outside was really really fun. It was, yeah, I liked how there was a lot more space. Kind of like how we were in the gym and we were in like a tiny little room. We had this big open space to do whatever we kind of wanted. And I just like to run around out here.
But I'll be living in the clouds. Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now.
I'll really miss the classroom at West Georgia Technical College with the great view. I'll miss the cafeteria and especially the big field that we have to play at recess and how different specials were. It was really fun because some of these things that we were doing at specials we never got to do when we were at Atkinson.
That's my drive. It's a vibe, been that way all my life. Yeah, I shut it down when I shine with the truth. Yeah, I ride with the crew. Gave my life to the truth. Testify. Walking water like the son of man. Understand? I'll never drown. Take a hit, never quit.
We're looking forward to going to Atkinson next year, but we'll really miss this.
Yeah, it's kind of cool telling people, like, when they ask you where to go to school, they're like, I go to West Georgia to college.
I've been down this road before. Now I know which way to go. You can try to drag me down, but I'll be living in the clouds. Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now.
I'm thankful for the college because they let us have room for, like, since our school got damaged, and they are really really nice of letting us have the math rooms that we're in, and it's pretty exciting.
Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now. You just gotta live.
Overall, my feeling was happy, and I felt safe here because there was a lot of police officers around, like wherever you went, like if you went to the bathroom or if you went down the stairs or like to specials or recess or lunch, you would always see a teacher or a college teacher, a college student, or a police officer. And it made me feel really safe. Thank you, West Georgia Technical College.
Right beyond the fire, you were born to win, yeah, you're a fighter. Don't let your light just fade away. You just gotta live. You just gotta live. You just gotta live. I just wanna live. You just gotta live. The way my life is wrong, I could never lose my hope. Everybody has their doubts, but you can't stop now. You just gotta live. Yeah. I just wanna live.
The gist of all that, we kept having school. We never stopped. Kids continue to be the priority, just like they always have been, always will be, and we did whatever it took to make sure that we could continue to have school. The board, extremely supportive. I have one of the best boards out there. Their leading question, what do you need and what's best for kids? Those are the two leading questions that I always get. I kept them updated like all of you would throughout. At the beginning, it was of course daily updates, sometimes multiple updates a day, and then as we were able to kind of stretch out and have longer term plans, they became more spaced out as far as how we were going to have school. One of the things that I reflected a lot on in the aftermath of the tornado was our responsibilities to the community and our responsibilities to each other. One of the things I think that drove our work in the aftermath, our community has expectations of us. That expectation of us to have school and have it well did not stop because a tornado came right through the middle of town and destroyed 2 schools. We owe it to our kids, we owe it to our community to make sure that they get the highest quality education and that they graduate ready to be contributing members of our community. And that work did not stop. It goes on to this day. One of the things that this has shown me, though, is I always knew we needed our community. Never realized how much a community needed us. That reciprocal relationship in the days and weeks after the tornado, it just jumps right out at you. And it's changed. It's changed me. We've adapted. Newnan High School is now on 2 campuses. We have our first-time 9th grade students. They're like the in-laws coming to visit with Mr. Whitlock. They're there for a couple years, though. We were able to bring 30 mobile classrooms onto the CEC campus.
And they're in more and more CEC classes.
Yes, they are. And there's opportunity in this. So 30 mobile classrooms, approximately 700 9th grade students, first-time 9th graders on that campus. They will be there until August of 2024 when the new Newnan High School opens. Mark makes a great point, though. There is opportunity in everything. And out of a negative, one of the opportunities here is our first-time 9th graders are getting access to programming that they may not otherwise have gotten because they're on the campus of our College and Career Academy. Newnan High School, 10th through 12th grade students are on the Newnan High campus. We had 3 buildings there that were less damaged that we were able to get ready over the summer of 2021. That plus 30 mobile classrooms on that campus allows us to house grades 10 through 12. So approximately 1,400, 1,600 students there that are on the Newnan High campus until we get the new building completed in 2024. There you can see some of our mobile classrooms, our modular units, there on the campus of Newnan High School. I'll skip over the update from the summer and today. Newnan High School, the more damaged buildings have all been torn down at this point. Construction has begun on the new buildings at Newnan High School, slated to be completed in August of 2024. So it's been quite the journey. It's been, again, I go back to what I said earlier, it's been the most difficult time period personally and professionally that I can remember for me. I will say this to you though, it's also been one of the most gratifying times personally and professionally for me. The work of these folks, our other district office staff, the resilience of our kids and our employees, it's so gratifying to see it. I got to know a gentleman in the days after the storm. He's actually become a pretty good friend, and he has a saying. The saying is, sometimes you find yourself in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes in the middle of nowhere, you find yourself. I don't mind telling you, like a lot of you, COVID, I was in the middle of nowhere. March 26th of 2021, when we showed up on that campus, definitely qualifies as middle of nowhere. But I think over the better part of the last 19 months, for me as superintendent, I've begun to find myself as a superintendent. As a district, we've kind of caught our second wind. We've picked ourselves up and we've been very successful. So I think collectively, we might have found ourselves. So with that, let me end by saying, I hope you never go through it. If anybody does, all you got to do is call. And I remember those that reached out to me in the days after. I'll never forget the offers of maintenance men and school buses and all those things. A lot of good people in this state. So we appreciate your time today. Thank you.